How you doing, Charlotte?
I don't have to look at myself. I am great. It's really exciting to chat to you. Thanks for wanting to do this.
My absolute pleasure. I'm just sorry I can't be there in person to talk to you about it, but thank you for doing it on the weird world of remoteness.
Yeah, all good. I'm gonna move you actually, because otherwise I'm looking down.
Yeah, get comfortable. There you go.
Right.
Oh, mate, congratulations on Aftersun. Oof.
Thank you.
What a beautiful and brilliant and tender and powerful film. It's absolutely extraordinary.
Thank you.
Has it been a long time coming? Has it been a project you've been working on for?
It's been a long time coming. Yeah, it's been exactly that. Yeah, it's been about 7 years since I started it, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long time. I think that like the idea first occurred to me in maybe like 2015. Yeah. I took myself on a holiday to Cyprus, like on a package holiday, and I started writing it after I finished film school. I had a classmate who lived in Cyprus, so kind of like doubled up visiting and going to this hotel. Yeah, so it's been a long time. It was a journey to write and obviously to make, but it's quite special to be at this point.
I bet. What's the kind of catalyst or the seed or the kind of the inspiration for the story, really?
Yeah, I mean, a few different things. I think it was a few strands coming together at one point in time. I was getting toward the end of film school where they encourage you to think about what a feature film might be. And I had made this short film called Tuesday about a teenage girl kind of getting on with a Tuesday on which she normally goes to stay with her dad. And you get the sense over the course of the film that he is no longer there, but she is carrying on as though he were. And I think in many ways this film was a continuation of that.
Yeah.
In a way that I hadn't really recognized until quite recently, because I can think of a very concrete start point for all of the projects that I've done apart from this one. And I think it's because it was in many ways a continuation of something else. Like something that I had a bit more to say about than maybe I'd expressed in one short film. Yeah, and then there was this like during that time I started to flip through old holiday albums. But my dad was young when I was born, and we'd go on holiday together, and he was mistaken for my brother all the time, and he didn't bother correcting people. And he just looked so young in these pictures, and there was this one from Spain. You see these like gorgeous orange trees in the background. It was one of those like day trips, and I'm sitting by a pool with just a pair of pants on, and there's this gorgeous woman right behind me. And I remember looking at it thinking, like, who's he taking a picture of? And wow. I'm sure it was me, but like those are the kind of things you allow to be catalysts for ideas. And you think
they park themselves, don't they? They park themselves in your brain to then.
Yeah, and it's like a funny story, but it was kind of the inspiration for something that at first was a bit more fictional, like a father and a daughter on holiday. How does he balance being a young man with being a young parent? What does he do at night when she's asleep? But I think over the course of writing it, it became more than that. It became a bit more personal in a certain way.
There's so many beautiful textures to the film and in the way that you tell this story. You've got the different time frames, obviously. There's sort of time locations. I don't know how to refer to it, but the kind of
like timelines almost.
Yeah, timelines. That's the word I was looking for. But but the things like the home video stuff that you see it, but then you also see them shooting it as well, which is such a clever way of keeping us as in the audience in the story and with them and feeling those feels, of kind of how they are. And when she does the she kind of interviews him and stuff, and she's like, and all those great questions that an 11-year-old would ask, when you were 11, what did you think you'd be doing now, kind of thing, all that kind of stuff. It's like, there's just, it feels so natural. And Frankie, I mean, where the hell did you find Frankie? Because, oh my God, talk about talk about talent, and
Yeah.
she's just, I mean, Paul's brilliant, and I'm not taking anything away from Paul and how good he is, but
Paul's brilliant, but that's less of a surprise.
yeah,
I think we
yeah,
know
we
that.
kind of know that, yeah. But this little firecracker, she is extraordinary.
Yeah, she is. It was a process. I worked with this casting director, Lucy Party, who is known for making discoveries, working with young talent. And yeah, we just cast the net far and wide. And it was during like the height of the second wave of COVID, and it was hard to gain access to spaces that would otherwise be easy, you know, like sports clubs, boxing clubs, football clubs, schools. And instead we're leveraging the immense power of WhatsApp, mums WhatsApp groups, you know,
Oh my God.
and Facebook groups, and just spreading the word. We had like a flyer and we put it out, and we had submissions from almost 800 kids in the end. And we would set them exercises to do, like do a physical activity and run around in the garden or climb a tree, tell us a story but in a whisper, you know, all of these things. And until the point where we brought 16 kids in person in Glasgow in February of last year. And Frankie just blew us away. She was the biggest surprise of those sessions, of that first day. I remember Lucy saying that to me. Frankie was the biggest surprise, just came in and had this ability to act that I think is really rare in young performers. I think I was expecting a kid to just be themselves, somebody who could be comfortable in front of a camera, be themselves sufficiently that I could create an environment to capture it. I had this teacher who once described filmmaking as setting traps. Like you lay the traps the best you can, and you see what you can capture. And I think that's still true, but in Frankie, she has more control. I think she really is able to perform. In fact, she got so savvy at performing. There was this one moment on the rooftop scene where Callum's joking about fancying her teacher.
Yeah.
And I was behind a flag looking at the monitor because the sun was quite low and I couldn't really see. But it meant I didn't have the actors in my direct line of vision. I could just see what was on the screen, which was fairly rare. Like normally I could see both. And Paul came to me after a take and he's like, she knows the camera's not on her now, so she's just like chilling out on the couch looking the other way. He's like, you have to tell her that she has to actually perform in the scene properly, even if the camera's not on her. And I'm like, Frankie, what are you doing? She's just really smart and so savvy, and really, really quite brilliant. And that was clear on set. Like that wasn't something we discovered in the edit. Obviously, in the edit, you're kind of writing again in some sense, and you're refining what's there, but it was clear on set that it was really special what she was doing.
Obviously there's a script, but when you watch the film, it feels so natural, it feels so organic, it feels so real, the conversations that they have, and even just the physical reactions to things when there's no dialogue as well. It just feels such a natural response to the situation that they're in. Was it, how much did you stick to script, and considering that, I mean, I don't know if she's done anything before, but kind of nothing. Oh my God. But how much kind of freedom and did you encourage play for them on set?
Yeah, it is quite closely to script. But that being said, there was also room for play, and that came in different forms. Sometimes it came in allowing a scene to run longer than it was scripted for. So there's a scene where a Polaroid slowly develops in frame, and I allowed one of their conversations from a scene that we let run to play under that, you know, and that was just them. There were other points where maybe Frankie wasn't quite feeling or fully grasping the dialogue, and so we would make sure she was really clear about where it landed, and she could find her own way there. And then there were other things that during the rehearsal periods, she said that I wrote into the script, or Paul said. It was a case of kind of making sure that the script met their natural speech patterns, and so that it did sound as natural as possible. You know, I think that's where you have to work to meet actors, to to get that. And there are a few lines in the film that Frankie said during those rehearsals that I wrote into the script because they were fantastic. I really wanted her dialogue to feel very authentic to a 10, 11-year-old kid, you know. I never wanted that character to feel like an adult in a child's body, which I think can sometimes happen. You have these like overly precocious children on screen, and I did want her very much to feel like a kid.
The music in the film, both in terms of Oliver Coates that you work with on score, but then also the needle drops are brilliant. And I don't know if this was deliberate and stuff, and it's quite hard sometimes when you try and watching the film and trying to make notes, and I can never read my writing after I've made notes watching it. But it feels like so many of the needle drop songs, the lyrical content has a kind of narrative purpose in terms of there's a lot that's being said in the song that either could reflect what's going on within the story narratively, or as kind of almost internalization or a moment or a situation. Is that a fair point?
Yeah, it is. And it's really challenging because I think when you have a film that's this quiet, you're going to read into the lyrics either way. And so choosing songs is really difficult because even I, in the edit room, and Blair, the editor that I worked with, like, you do the same, you know, as soon as you put a song in, the lyrics are so prominent if there isn't dialogue happening at the same time. And so it was about choosing things that either lent into that, played against it, making sure that when the lyrics were very closely related to the narrative at a given point, that it worked. And there's an obvious example of that at the end of the film where it's quite literal, quite literal in a film that otherwise avoids the literal in many ways. But I think at that point we felt like we'd earned it, or we tried to earn it. We tried to earn it as we worked toward that moment in the film.
Blur's Tender is one that really stuck out, and also I think what's also really nice as well is the needle drop choices almost kind of give it a sort of, not sort of drop it in when it's set sort of thing, but it gives it a kind of feel of an era almost in a way as well.
Yeah, I think like the 90s period is infused throughout the film in many regards, from costumes to design to the size of tiles on the wall. But I think music was the most immediate way to create that sense of period. And I didn't want to draw the audience's attention to the period in a way that distracted from the film.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
And so it was also a case of trying to be subtle but confident with it, I suppose. To effectively communicate when it's taking place, and music was a huge part of that. And Tender was one of the few tracks that was written in the script that I very much hoped we'd be able to use.
What were the conversations with Oliver? Because he's really interesting, I think, in the kind of the experience that he's had working as part of the music department, be that as a musician or whatnot in other films, from Under the Skin to Thebe, Phantom Thread and all that kind of stuff. Is cello his instrument?
Yeah, it is very much.
I mean, I love that instrument. I was lucky enough to chat to Hilda Goodnuttier about her Joker score particularly, you know, and how she kind of, you know, and the fact that she feels it, you know, it's like she's almost hugging this instrument, and and the score is beautiful in this. It's so
there was
gorgeous.
A moment in I spent a couple of days with Oliver in Glasgow where he lives, and there was a moment that I was describing in the under pressure sequence of trying to find a way for the score to meet the vocal slide that Freddie Mercury does. And he walked to the back of the room, opened his cello case, sat down. I was just sitting there trying to remain very cool and not thrilled. And I was talking very abstractly, like, maybe we could somehow like find a way to kind of allow, because there are moments in that sequence where the soundtrack and the score meet each other and moments where they depart. And it was finding the right points in time where they did that. And so I was talking about trying to reach this thing, and he just pulled out the cello he hit play, and he literally met the note, you know, and then he pushed beyond it. And I just remember thinking, that is so perfect. And it's my favorite moment in the film. It's my favorite moment when I'm watching is that cello, as Oliver's cello takes over from Freddie Mercury's voice. And it's so special. We played with a lot of different temp music in the edit, temp score. I wasn't 100% that there would be score the evening before we started shooting. And a couple of weeks in, I knew there would be. Like, I had a sense of where we were heading, had a sense of how it was looking. And I began to understand that score could contribute a great deal, but I had never used score before in my shorts. So it's quite intimidating to figure out. And I remember in the edit, we had the bus sequence when they moved from the airport to the hotel, and my editor put some music under it. And it was one of those like, oh, we made a film. We made a film kind of moments. Oh, score can do that. In a way that's a bit dangerous, because it's such like a shortcut to feeling sometimes. And I never wanted it to be that. I wanted it, you know, to kind of work in parallel with everything else in the film, and always to emerge from nothing. Like we worked quite hard that the score cues rise and kind of sneak up on you, where you're not entirely certain when they began. We use lots of different types of temp score. We tried everything under the sun until Blair pulled in the music of Eliane Radigue, who's a early electronic music pioneer who worked with analog synthesizers. Yeah. And when I first met Oliver, he knew every single Eliane Radigue piece that we had used in the temp score. He was a huge fan. Had programmed like a session in a church where people brought yoga mats and lay down and listened to Eliane Radigue. And it was just this amazing match. And it wasn't about emulating it. Like that was never what I was interested in doing. But I think there was a mutual understanding of intention. Yeah. That him knowing that music so well gave him. It was a really fun process. He'd give us different elements. He lettered them. And we would combine them in the edit and then send them back. And it was always the best thing that could happen in a day when we woke up to music from Oliver.
That's awesome. It's also, it's almost those three things in terms of that side of it. It's the cues that Oliver's written, it's the needle drops, but it's also the silence. It's also the moments where you've not got music, and there's that amazing, the silence when he's dancing on the balcony. Yeah. That like is kind of, it kind of felt like I held my breath for that whole kind of moment sort of thing. You're kind of like, because I mean, the tension that you've managed to build throughout this film, it's kind of that weird thing where you kind of go, oh, yeah. It's almost, it is like almost like intense breathing in a way, in terms of how you know, your concern that you have for this relationship, for these characters, for the outcome, all that kind of thing, as you're sort of putting the pieces together as we go through the story. It's so brilliant. At that moment was just kind of, it was breathtaking.
Thank you. Yeah, that was actually quite a late addition in the edit, allowing that scene to play out in one. And it feels so essential to communicating the language of the film in a lot of ways. It's amazing to think it wasn't always there. Yeah, I became quite interested in allowing breaths, like the breathing of characters, to almost perform a score at certain points, or allowing them to come to the forefront of the soundscape of the film. And in that moment, her breath kind of hands off to his breath in the morning, and playing around with that idea. And yeah, it's both very meditative and also builds a lot of tension, I think. And what I discovered when we first did a tech check for the film, that sequence played, and I remember thinking it's too quiet, forgetting that we'd allowed the breaths to crescendo over that scene, and it forces you to physically lean in a cinema. And I really like that. You're kind of playing with people's like almost with their bodies in a way, like there's like a physical engagement that I think is quite interesting.
Also made me think of that thing, because, you know, I love when she's got the camcorder and she's when she's like kids reporting on holiday. I think every kid's done it. Like my dad's got this amazing cine footage of me like being a News at 10 reporter while my mum's on a parachute off the back of a boat in Spain or somewhere. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
And but it's that thing of almost like when kids have microphones as well, they just breathe like, you know, they kind of they just like that weird thing. It's that go-to thing that they do where they like they breathe, they like feel like they've almost got to have the microphone in their mouth sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of heightened intensity of the sound.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that moment. I also the one of the cues that I wrote down here as well, the cue on the boat and the arms are touching.
Yeah.
And it's the cello.
Yeah.
And it's just got this beautiful, it's that thing where I think that what's great about it is that instrument in particular, it's sort of, it's an internal emotion almost in a way. Like, but it's the synergy of those two characters, almost the emotion of that connection in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a piece that's almost drawn like it's so funny. Sometimes I still see the film in terms of the edit timeline.
I can see in your face, you're like looking at it.
I know, I can see it. My eyes like leave reality, and I still see the Avid open in front of me. And yeah, that sound, it starts over the image of him in the bathroom and her in the chair reading the magazine or the book. And it carries us through onto the boat and the water in their hands, and you see them kind of out of focus with the background of the boat as the boat passes by. You
feel the heat as well in the film. You almost kind of like that thing of like, you know, when you come within sort of eyesight of a swimming pool and you can smell that chlorine and you can smell the heat of a place as well. I think the way that you've kind of the palette that you've chosen, the way you've chosen to shoot it, it's so sensual, and that you kind of almost kind of feel that heat and smell that, those kind of smells. And the arcade sequence as well, I love all that. It's the music, the way that you've used the music in that as well, it's absolutely brilliant. There's the like the Catatonia track.
That's one of my favorite. Yeah, that's one of my favorite songs in the film. Fun. And it was also one of those very happy and beautiful accidents where at one point in the edit, also thinking about the timeline, like the song ran over. And I think it's just because we were kind of refining where it started, and I hit play and it ran over, and because that song is quite heavy, and then it pulls back, and it pulled back at exactly the moment that it cuts from the hectic arcade space onto this pan of the landscape of the mountains, of the other buildings. And that's also a place where the lyrics were so appropriate. It's so appropriate to the moment in a way that I never would have thought possible or intended. And that's one of my favorite musical moments in the film. It's letting Carrie Matthews' voice just take over there.
Yeah. It is. The choices are brilliant. I mean, you know, when we talk to people about when they use needle drops as well, the funny thing that they always talk about is like how expensive it always sort of thing in terms of getting, and you've got some big hitters in there as well, you know, in terms of.
There are some big hitters in there, and that is all to the credit of Lucy Bright, our music supervisor. I do not know how she did it. And it was constantly terrified. I would get a call and it would take something I adored off the table, and it didn't really happen. There was a point at which there's a point in the film where the boredom of a holiday kind of sets in, and they're both by the pool, and they're not quite on the same page and are missing each other all of that day in terms of mood, and it cuts back and forward between them both listening to music. And in the Temp soundtrack, it moved from Oasis to the Spice Girls. And that was the only moment Lucy was like, Charlie, you know how we're not really hearing this music and it's playing through really tinny headphones and it's mostly just about the kind of vibes here? Do you need Oasis and the Spice Girls? And I was like, no, it's okay. The Spice Girls were such a huge part of my identity age 10, 11, but I also think there are certain tracks that do draw too much attention to themselves, which is why I didn't fight for the Spice Girls in the film, because I think it's too it draws too much attention away.
Yeah.
But there's Aqua, you know,
Yes, there
and
is.
there's
And
all
there's
these other.
Deacon Blue though as well. Get
There's
in.
Deacon Blue, and it felt
Yes.
important that Callum's soundtrack not
Yeah.
be 90s, not be the late 90s, that it skew more 80s because he's older, you know. And I didn't want the music to all be from like 1998 or 7 or 9 or wherever it sits around, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for the Deacon Blue.
Yeah. The moment where with the karaoke moment as well. Oh
yeah.
my broken heart. Oh my God.
That's Frankie. Isn't she amazing in that scene? And she
Sweet
wouldn't do
Lord.
it. She wouldn't do it until she had to do it. I could
So you
not get
didn't
her
know?
to sing that song. She hated that song. She hates that song so much. And we, for 2 weeks, we would kind of wander over to that little amphitheater at the hotel. She just wouldn't do it. And then once she did a verse of it, or she performed it, but really goofing around. And I remember seeing that and thinking, I know she can do it. And I'm going to trust that she'll pull it out of the bag when it counts. And she did. And it's unbelievable, the journey that she takes the audience on in her performance. It's really amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, man, it's so good. Barney Jenkins is a producer on the film, is that right?
Yeah, he is indeed.
He is a gorgeous human being who I mean, oh my God, his energy and enthusiasm for creativity, not just film, is just amazing. How did that come about, if you don't mind me asking?
No, not at all. So Barry works with Adela Romansky, who produced Moonlight, with a few others. And Adela was the first person I sent the script to. She discovered my shorts through friends who shared. And we met for a breakfast and then a coffee and a brunch. And I kept promising the script. And she claims that I gave the impression the script was a bit further along than it was. For 2 years, until she stopped calling and I was on their no-fly list. No more brunches for Charlie.
Until she delivers this script.
And then I delivered the script and hoped they'd still be there, and they were there. And Adela was the first person on the project. And Barry, but Barry was making Beale Street Could Talk when I first met Adela. They were shooting in New York. Wow. And then he became like more actively involved during post. He'd watch cuts and give notes, and has really stepped forward at this point, as you know, to help introduce the film to the world. And he does have such like enthusiasm. Like he is the best hype man that anyone could ever hope for. When he introduces the film, it's just, he has such a gift for so many things, obviously. But speaking is one of them that I deeply envy. How effortlessly he can stand up and speak very thoughtfully and passionately about something. And I'm very, very lucky to have him in my corner.
Amazing. That's lovely. What a beautiful, it's so nice to hear, like, and I also hope that that's, you know, when you're talking about your music supervisor as well, you kind of, people read the script, or they get to see a cut or an edit of it, and they go, this is a great film, I want to be part of it. You know, that kind of idea of being really supportive to brilliant, exciting new voices in film. It's like, you really hope that people will be supportive, don't you? That's the way it should be.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can hope for. Like, the script was written very visually in all the ways they tell you not to write a script. And I was just really lucky to have people, you know, starting with Adela, who really supported what I was trying to do. And it's not an individual endeavor making films.
Yeah.
And I think you can only hope to have collaborators on who care about what they're doing, you know, who care about the bigger picture and not just when lunch will be served. And I was very lucky to have many of those people on this. Both old friends like my editor and cinematographer, and new collaborators, you know, but like Oliver and others. Yeah, that's what it's all about.
See if we do one more question before we get, I see you're coming in the back here. Just with Paul though, you know, in terms of, you know, I'm excited as well to watch his journey and where he's going as an actor. And what was it about him, but also for him, what was it about this project, do you think, that those, you know?
Yeah. I mean, for him, I suppose that's a question for him, but I've heard him articulate it a little. I mean, I think he just felt like he responded to the script in a way that few people did. And it was very sincere. And I felt that when I spoke to him. He was so passionate about it. He'd read it more than I had recently read it. I always found it very difficult to read the script from beginning to end. And he had a lot of empathy for the character, I think. I love the way that he spoke about the character. And I think he saw a challenge in it, you know, as something he hadn't done before.
Yeah.
And he's just so warm and thoughtful, and he's a fantastic actor, and he has these innate qualities that lend themselves so well to the character, because the character's struggle had to be surprising. You know, if it was on the surface, there wouldn't have been any tension in the film. Yeah. You know, this needs to be somebody who's able to protect his daughter from his own struggles with mental health, you know, and successfully. He needs to, for the most part, successfully protect her from that. I think that takes somebody very special who can let so much simmer under the surface and be in control of when it comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul was, he was fantastic. And he was such an amazing partner. I feel really lucky and excited and proud, honestly, to stand on the stage with him presenting this film. The work that he put in with Frankie and being all together is really special.
Yeah. Thanks so much for your time, Charlotte. And you've made something that's really, really special.
Thank you.
And it's so exciting to know what's next as well. So I'm ready here, kind of excited to see what you do next, I think, because this is an extraordinary piece of work, and I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, it's very surreal to think that I will be on this podcast, which I listen to. So.
Oh, no way! Thank you. Oh,
yeah, no, thank you.
I selfishly just do it because I'm so nosy and I love hearing about people's process, and so I kind of forget that actually people might listen to it. So
people might listen, yeah, and they do. I'm pretty sure they do, and I love talking about process. This is my favorite part.
Oh, amazing! Well, thank you so much, and have a great day. And yeah, congratulations on the film again. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.